The college football playoff picture continues to get more and more clear. We continue to eliminate more and more teams, and we're going to take a look at this updated playoff picture and, again, look at the new eliminations as, we're down to, I didn't count them up, but probably about 15 to 20 teams maybe still alive. Maybe a little bit more than that, because you do have some teams that could, Big 12 teams that could win the Big 12 championship that have 2 losses. And so you've got like 4 of those teams. But let's just jump right into it. So let's start with the new eliminations. We got Cincinnati, Missouri, Pittsburgh, Texas Tech, and Vanderbilt. I realize that Missouri did not lose, but as we continue to see them ranked in the 20s in the playoff rankings, that tells me they have no chance of moving up into the top 12. Their only chance would be to win the SEC championship. And I don't see any path for them there because they're like at the bottom of the tiebreaker. So if they do, if there is an 8-way tie or whatever for the SEC championship, and you have a bunch of teams with 2 losses, they lose like all the tiebreakers. So they're not going to, like, you'd have to have every team except for, you'd have to have like one team finish with 1 loss, and then all these other teams in the SEC would have to have 3 losses basically. And that's just not going to happen. So Missouri is out. Cincinnati now with 3 losses in the Big 12, they're out. Pittsburgh now with 2 losses in the ACC. That's not going to get you in there. Texas Tech, 3 losses in the Big 12. They're now out. And then Vanderbilt in the SEC, they're out of it. And I think they were actually already out of it last week probably. But Vandy is now officially out. So let's go to the each conference. Actually, first, before we go to the Power 4 conferences, let's look at the group of 5. There's been no change here. We've still got the exact same teams alive. So in the American, you've got Army, you've got Navy, you've got Memphis, and you've got Tulane. All these teams have 2 or fewer losses, and I still think a 2-loss American champion could get in, especially if Boise State were to slip up in the Mountain West. In the Mountain West, we still got Boise State and UNLV. UNLV could potentially win a rematch against Boise State in the Mountain West Championship, and they could get in. So both of those teams still alive. Louisiana, it's looking more and more likely that they do not have a real shot. They've only got 1 loss. I thought they might get ranked this week, but they went with Tulane instead, which Tulane did beat them head-to-head. So I think for Louisiana, I don't think they're going to pass even a 2-loss American or Mountain West champion. And so they're probably out of it, but I'm not going to eliminate them just yet. We could get chaos in the American and the Mountain West. We could have, what if a 2-loss or a 3-loss team somehow emerges and wins the American or the Mountain West. I think Louisiana pretty much out of it, but they've still got a shot. And then for Notre Dame, of course, they're not a group of 5, but they're an independent, so I threw them here on this graphic. They went out, they're in. I think they're safe. They lose a game, they're out. I think it's as simple as that. I do not see a 2-loss Notre Dame team getting in. But if they went out, again, they're ranked high enough that they're going to be in. So now let's go through each of the Power 4 conferences, and we'll start with the ACC. SMU and Miami still in control. So I say that Miami is in control. I think there is like maybe a crazy scenario where they would not win the tiebreaker with Clemson, but as of right now, it does look like they definitely have that tiebreaker. So Miami in control. If they win out, they will be in. SMU, they're obviously undefeated. So they're the only undefeated team, at least in conference play, left in the ACC. So if they win out, they're in. And again, Miami, what it's going to come down to, if they do finish with a tie with Clemson, is more than likely going to be the head-to-head against Louisville. Miami beat them. Clemson lost. Unless Louisville falls apart and drops in the standings, and then things maybe change a little bit. But I feel pretty safe. I think it's pretty safe to say that Miami is in control. If they win out, they're going to get in. And then again, SMU, obviously, if they win out, they will be in. And then, back to the ACC. So I must have missed the graphic here. Clemson is still alive. So Clemson, they need one of 2 things to happen here. They need one or a combination of things. It's not quite that simple. So they need Miami to lose a game. Miami loses, Clemson wins out. Clemson's there, and that's the easy path for Clemson. If that happens, they're in. Again, there is a scenario. So SMU could lose 2 games, or Louisville could drop in the standings, and SMU loses one game. Clemson beats Pitt. Then the tiebreaker goes to head-to-head against Pitt. I know SMU beat it. So I don't even know. I think for Clemson, it's pretty clear. You've got to beat. You've got to have Miami lose. I mean, that's the path. Or you got to have SMU lose 2 games, which is very, very unlikely. So that's the path for Clemson. They have a chance. I don't think they're out of it, or they're obviously not out of it, but I don't think their chances of getting one of those 2 things to happen are very high. But Miami does have to play at Syracuse. Could be a tricky game. SMU losing 2 games, again, seems very unlikely, but you never know. All right, let's go to the Big 12 now. We got in control BYU and Colorado. So Colorado moves up into this category. They are now the only 1-loss team in conference play. BYU undefeated. Obviously, they're in control. For Colorado, win out, you're in. You lose a game, and you might still get in because we would then have tiebreakers. So Colorado's sitting pretty there with the 1 loss, and BYU, again, I guess they haven't quite clinched it because if they did lose the rest of their games, they wouldn't possibly get in. But BYU is in great shape. And there is this scenario also where what if BYU goes 12-0, Colorado beats them in the Big 12 championship? I feel like BYU probably still gets in the playoff. That happened with TCU. They went 12-0, lost in the Big 12 championship. They still got in, and that was a 4-team playoff. And I know this year has been kind of crazy, and it's different, but I don't see BYU dropping all the way out of the top 11 or whatever. So, yeah, I think BYU is in great shape. And even if they don't win the conference championship, and that would, if Colorado does win the Big 12, that's going to steal an at-large bid from potentially an SEC team. And we'll talk about that scenario a little bit more when we get to the SEC. But in the teams that need help in the Big 12, Kansas State, Arizona State, Iowa State, West Virginia. This one, again, these teams all have 2 losses, so you need Colorado to lose, and then you're going to have to win a tiebreaker. That's what it's going to come down to. Or Colorado loses 2 games, you finish with 2 losses. Again, you're probably going to have to win a tiebreaker. A 2-loss team getting into the Big 12 championship is probably going to have to win a tiebreaker, and that's obviously going to be something to discuss if Colorado does lose a game and see who actually would get in that scenario. The Big Ten has not changed. These teams are all in control. Win out, you're in. Question is going to be if Indiana loses to Ohio State, do they get in? I really think it matters how that game turns out. I've said this before. I think if Indiana gets blown out by Ohio State, I don't think that they're going to get in because they're not going to have anything on the resume. If they lose a close game, I think they will get in. Then you've got, all these different scenarios. What if Ohio State loses to Indiana? Do they still get in? I'm going to say probably not. But I think they're going to drop below some of those 2-loss SEC teams. Not all of them, but Alabama, Ole Miss, Georgia. And then you've got Oregon. They're in great shape, obviously. They can afford a loss at this point, really. And then Penn State, as long as they went out, they should be in. But they're not going to have really much of a resume. I don't think that there's any chance that they drop out, though. I think Penn State is safe if they win out. So for the SEC, teams still in control: Alabama, Tennessee, Texas, and Texas A&M. Tennessee, Texas, Texas A&M. If they win out, they'll go to the SEC championship. If they win that, obviously they're in. Alabama, I think, is where you draw the line under them. I think they're ranked high enough that they're safe. If they win out, they will get an at-large spot in the playoff because I don't think there are enough teams that could steal at-large bids. Like, let's say SMU wins the ACC. I think in that scenario, Miami then drops out, and so Alabama's in. Colorado, BYU could both get in. I talked about that being a potential way that a team could steal an at-large bid, and that's why I don't think Ole Miss and Georgia are safe because that scenario could play out. But I think Alabama is ranked just high enough that they're safe, and then again, obviously these other teams, if they went out, they're in. And then we've got LSU, Ole Miss, and Georgia. These teams need help. LSU doesn't need a whole lot of help, actually, because they actually would own the tiebreakers for all these 2-loss teams. They would own the tiebreaker. So, at least as it stands now, that could change depending on all the different results. But if Tennessee loses and then Texas A&M, they have to play each other. So one of those teams is going to have 2 losses. Then LSU, again, would win that tiebreaker between all these 2-loss teams as it stands now. And if they win the SEC championship, they're in. So that's a way, I guess, that another bid could be stolen, another at-large bid. But again, I don't really see that happening. LSU still got some tough games, and the tiebreakers could change as well. I think Alabama could wind up actually finishing ahead of LSU. We'll see. We'll see. We'll keep an eye on that. Ole Miss and Georgia, I think if they win out, they're in. But like I said, if Colorado stills a bid or LSU stills a bid, like there are ways that these teams could be left out. I don't think they're ranked high enough to feel safe. But I would say if they win out, Ole Miss probably has an 80% chance to get in. Georgia probably has a 70% chance to get. Actually, let's raise those up. Ole Miss probably has a 90% chance. Georgia an 80% chance. But if we get chaos and we get some surprises in these conference championship games, that could possibly knock out one or even both of these teams. So that's the updated playoff picture heading into Week 12. Give me your thoughts down in the comments below.